Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright my friends, welcome to my week 4 weekly reading wrap up here. And we have quite a few books to talk about, including the elusive and dramatic and tea-inducing story Onyx Storm, because I read it and I have stuff to say about it. Most of it will be non-spoiler, but I will do a tiny little bit of spoilers. They will be clearly marked. You'll be able to skip right ahead if you don't want any of them. But I also have a few things to say about the debacle that was release day, maybe clear a few things up that I think some people don't understand how they work, and then also bitch along with some of it because I think some of it was also ridiculous as well. But let's go ahead and dive right into some stuff. But first we have to thank the people who make this possible for me to do this full time. We had a lot of new members and patrons this week, and you guys, you just make me tear up. I love you all so much. We have 3 new channel members, which is great. Yes, I do still have channel memberships. I know I don't always bring them up as much, but my channel members are the OG supporters of this. My channel members are the reason I even felt strong enough to be able to do this full time. So they are just as important as my patrons are. And there are different benefits in both areas. So in channel memberships, we have Big Mac Davis, who joined at the Faded Friend level. We have Lauren Zilla, who joined at the Dedicated Diva level. And we have Shelly B, who joined at the Sassy Supporter level. And then for my patrons, Big Mac Davis also became a patron, so thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Linda B, who has been a longtime supporter of me for ages. Linda, you're such a sweetheart. I adore you so much. Thank you so much for joining my Patreon. And then we have Laura M, who also joined as well. Thank you all so much. You just made my week. You did. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So if you would like to support me and help make this happen long term for me to keep doing this crazy little ride, please check out in the description. I have links to my join channel memberships, my Patreon, support me with a one-time gift through Ko-Fi, or any of those things. I also have my wish list if you'd like to send me a book. That also helps out the channel. Any money I'm not having to spend on books, definitely helpful as well. So all of those options are down below. All right, enough of the self-promotion. Let us get into what I read this week. And there was quite a few things. What did I have? I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. Got through 9 things. Look at me there. That was going to bother me. That was going to bother me. I'm so sorry. We are starting off with some very sexiness here. There was Lessons with the Mothman by Catherine Moon. So this is book 3 in the Monster Smash Agency, which is basically a monster escort service. They're monster sex workers is how it goes, right? The first one was the Orc, Games with the Orc. The second one was Howl at the Gargoyle. Yeah, Howl for the Gargoyle. And then this one is Lessons with the Mothman. Now, very odd kind of setup for this one. I mean, I know it might be difficult to come up with new reasons, I guess, why people want to fuck monsters, but also I'm like, that's literally the name of the series. So, you know, Monster Smash is literally what it is. But in this one, we have a heroine named, where did I put her name at here in my notes? Victoria. And she is a bit of a scholar. And so she is studying actually monster mating habits, I guess. And so she ends up wanting to get connected with, the Monster Smash Agency to do this. Now, they're a little bit reticent to do it. They don't just want to be handing out the info of their workers and everything. But one of the workers who he kind of just works off and on when he wants is the Mothman, Elias. Now, he is what's called a moth fae. He's very rare. There are only so many moth males available. They only go into heat every so often. There are times even where he is kind of asked by his people to come and service females during his heat so that they have the chance of having a baby and everything. And that's actually the way that he was conceived too. He doesn't know who specifically his father is because his mother was bred by multiple people to make it happen. Completely by the mother's choice too. It's not like this is a forced thing. But anyway, that's not even important to this story. But he basically just helps off and on with the Smash Agency. He's not in it because like he, you know, needs to be making money doing it. He enjoys sex. He enjoys having sex with different beings, human and monster. And so that is what he likes to do, but he only really takes the jobs that he like wants to. And so he's speaking with one of the ladies who kind of does the matchmaking, and she's also getting a little bit, they're getting a little bit frustrated with her because she's kind of accidentally been setting these monsters up with their mates, right? Because the last, you know, we've seen with the orc and with the gargoyle, they have actually met their mates, which means they've quit their job because they no longer want to just sleep with everyone, or be forced to anyway. So that, you know, has kind of left him in a place. Now, when Elias hears about this woman and the project she's looking into, he's very curious. So he actually agrees to meet with her, and they kind of come up with a deal. So she's not straight up just going to be sleeping with him. He's actually going to be the one kind of like connecting her with these different monsters who will basically like fuck in front of her. So there's a lot of voyeurism that happens in this one. Though I will say for the book itself, we only actually like watch, I think, like 2 scenes. They're more just like mentioned. There's a one scene that's between what was that one? What is that couple? It's super hot. There's a Naga and a, shoot. What's the big one? I don't know, but there's this, there's some pretty hot couples. And eventually too, like she sees the Elias through his heat at one point. There are like role-playing things they do. Also a fun, well, not a fun, but like an interesting piece to this is that Victoria herself, she isn't someone who orgasms very regularly, and it's not something she even like likes to do. So she enjoys sex, but she doesn't like being pushed to orgasm. And it's very interesting because when her and Elias end up wanting to be together, she's like, I do want to have sex with you, but I just want it to be clear, I really don't want you to have the goal be that I orgasm. Like, I just want to enjoy this, and if you're trying to push me to that, it is very uncomfortable for me. And so Elias, who it isn't even just that he prides himself on making his partner orgasm, being in, like, he's a monster escort. Like, that's kind of the whole goal, is to see through fantasies and help people do that. But if her fantasy is just to experience some very fun sex without it having to culminate in anything, that is a bit difficult for him to wrap his mind around. But, you know, he's going to do what she wants. But one of the things that he becomes, in his own mind, very determined about is it's not so much about, like, the orgasm that she has being the thing he wants. It's he wants to get to the place where she trusts him enough to let him get her there. And so that's kind of the game these two are playing. So anyway, I've said enough about this one. This is 100% an erotic romance. One of the things I'm finding very interesting about my own, like, the way that I fill out my form for how I track my books is that I actually had 2 different books this time that it was difficult to pick which category they felt in, because to me, I ended up choosing erotic for this one, though this is like a fantasy or a monster romance, which I would normally put it in. But it can't be denied that their entire journey is basically through their sexual encounters and them gaining trust and all these things. So I put it under erotic, but also, you know, it's also that. So anyway, that's just my own identity crisis with the books and how I do it for my tracking and everything, right? But either way, this was definitely an erotic romance, but it is still fantasy. There is lots and lots of steam in this one. There is also a monster anatomy that we have. This is a kind of an office romance in a way. There is sexual exploration / a sex bargain throughout it. And then, yeah, so I gave this a 4-star just because I think that I wanted more development. And now one of the things, like, but their HEA for them is they are together, of course, at the end of this, but they are very free to be like, it just was weird how Catherine Moon decided to word this, because they are clearly together, but it's, I guess, not monogamous, but also it's not like they're just sleeping with whoever. They're inviting people in. So to me, it's like, it's not an open relationship. Even that's the way it's kind of being sold, because they're not doing any sexual things without each other. So it's more like, you know, they enjoy sharing themselves with other people. Like, that's fine. It's its own kink, but this isn't polyamory in that way. They're not looking to invite someone in and keep them with them. So I don't know. It was just weird. I don't really understand what the climax or the ultimate part of this was. But we do have a lot of wild sex in here. This will definitely show up in a lot of my kink videos to come forward, because we had, are you ready for this list? We had anal, we had a breeding kink, we had free use at sometimes, we had DP with toys, and with a non-binary octopus type creature toys. There was restraints, there was, as I said, sex toys, there was sharing and public play, and there was some somnophilia. Also, as I said, the hero went through a heat, so all of that going on. So this one is extremely sexy. So one of the other things, and this I actually noticed from someone else's review, right? Because when I filled this out, I was checking out reviews, make sure I didn't miss anything. Because there aren't really any like major trigger warnings for this besides a little bit of like, there was nothing big. They're all like sexy things is what they were to me. But these two have incompatible lifespans. And I was trying to think, like, I think that's actually the way things were with games for the orc too, now that I was thinking about it. But I didn't think that hard. Hal for the gargoyle, they're going to be good because she's now a werewolf. They're fine. There was nothing said about the fact that he is going to live for forever. And she's a human, and there isn't a thing where there was a magic thing where if they're mates, she'll live as long as him. So this is one of those that, like, this is a happy for now, but when I really don't like knowing that about the book, because it's one of those things where, like, sure, there are plenty of books that we know they're happy for now. Anything could happen to our couple in the future, but we don't want to think about that happening to them. And there is also the thing that someday he will, like, probably want to mate, not like mate, but he will like physically do a heat with a female, like a moth fae, because his kind is dying out. Which maybe this couple would like be cool with that because they like sharing. I don't know. So I don't know. That just put a tiny sour note on this on the back end of it, where someone pointed out there was no discussion of like their compatible lifespans. And usually when there's a fated mate situation and their kinds are of different length of life, there is some comments on that. Like, that's something that Lily Mayne actually addresses in hers, right? Because Danny is human, Wynn will live forever. There's actually a journey that they go on to make it so Danny can live as long as Wynn does. Like, they will have compatible lifespans, because that doesn't mean you would stop your happiness now over future sadness, but that's going to become a very big thing as we go. And I just don't like that we even had to worry about that. So anyway, that was weird. It soured it a bit after the fact for me. But I mean, I wouldn't have given it less than 4 stars. It was still a fine story. But I did end up skipping a few sex scenes. That's always a sign to me of like, okay, we need to get to the point now of their romance, because you just are shoving all this in there. But anywho, let's move along. Okay, now, I was also still finishing up the historical romance readathon last Saturday, so there was still 2 more historicals that I read this last week, and they were both similar in some interesting ways. But there was Her Wicked Proposal by Lauren Smith. I listened to an audio for this one. This is book, I think, 3 in the League of Rogues. I've read book 1, and I don't know if I've read book 2, but this was one that I was able to get a deal on this one, and so I snapped it up. But Lauren Smith, aka Emma Castle, I really love her stories. And this one, the League of Rogues, is like a league of gentlemen who have kind of become a found family for each other. And then this one we have Cedric, and I do remember the situation that made him blind, but there was a situation with a dangerous guy they were kind of fighting with in one of the last books, and he is actually blind. Now, I'll say straight up, this is a temporary blindness. By the end of this book, our hero has his sight again. Now, I'm okay with this because of how he lost his vision. It was through an injury to his head and an accident, and so it's not as if he was blind his whole life and then got it back. But when I talk about a book I read after this, you'll see what I mean. But anyway, he was injured and he's now been blind for, I believe, 6 months. So he's definitely wallowing in that. That would be terrifying. Like, I don't think that it is, a bad thing that he's struggling with that, because for his entire life, he's been able to do everything that he wants, and he's been able to see, he very much loves horses and horse breeding. That's actually something that attracted him to the heroine, and to just have that all taken away and now feel like an invalid and feel like you need people to care for you, that would be a lot. And it is often for, any character that had their full abilities and now doesn't, right? It's very much a struggle. Now, in the beginning of this, we have Anne Chesley, who is considered the Ice Maiden, and he had actually tried to flirt with her not too long ago, and he really had wanted to win her over. He liked her. He says he just wanted to have a fling with her, but he truly liked her, and she turned him away. And he was a playboy. He was a rake. He can't pretend anything else, but he also was quite hurt that she didn't give him like the time of day. Now he's blind, and she has recently lost her father, and so she is in need of getting off of the marriage mark because there are fortune hunters coming for her. Now, she also is very into horses, and so they share that love, and so she actually comes to him and she proposes to him and asks him to marry her. Because she knows that he's not hunting a fortune, and also she knows they have shared interests, and she knows he won't try to like control her or anything. And he agrees, but he has a stipulation because, again, he's been feeling very like emasculated, and particularly his mistress he had at the time he went blind was just... I'll never understand why we write women that way. I mean, I believe there will be sometimes, but the woman that he was with literally would laugh at him for the things he wasn't able to do now that he couldn't see, and just how infuriating that must be. So he tells her, he's like, this will be a real marriage if I'm going to marry you, and she's like, but you weren't looking for one. But I love his reasoning, actually. I truly do. And it won me over to him, even when there was times where I wanted to pop Cedric in the face, which we'll get to. But what I loved about him is that he thought when he went blind and he lost his sight, he lost his mobility, he lost, his independence in a lot of ways. And, then like his mistress, he got rid of her, or / she left him. He was feeling all these things, and now she wants to marry him. Granted, it is for a marriage of convenience in a lot of ways. But he says, he's like, if I'm going to get married, I want the whole thing. He's like, I'm not just going to be a husband in name only. He's like, if we're going to be together, like, I want a wife who wants to be in my bed. I want to have children. If this is my chance to like have that now when his world has been dark, he's like, I want it. And he's like, I know you're attracted to me and you need me, and in exchange, I want it to be a real marriage. And she is a bit reticent about this because she was hoping to marry him, and I mean, not be like mean to him, but she wanted a husband in name only. And she does kind of have a reason for wanting that because she was sexually assaulted. And we won't go into the whole situation about that, but she had her innocence stolen in a very like graphic way, and this isn't something she tells him right away, which will cause us harm later on, but I mean, I can understand. So like, she wants to agree to it, but she is also a bit like nervous about it, but she agrees. She's like, you're right, we're gonna go all the way with it. So those are the things I love about it. Now, as I brought up, there is the man who did assault her is not a random person that we'll never see again, and he's an absolute asshole who is going to try to cause problems. So a lot of the issue of this is that we have a villain who causes some issues in here. We also have a man who has a vendetta against the League of Rogues, and he wants to get revenge specifically against Cedric, and he's kind of just been waiting for Cedric to be in love with someone, so it's now going to put Anne in danger in that way. So there is that as well. So anywho, I ended up enjoying this one a lot. This is a series that does incorporate the other, there's a few other POVs of Leagues of Rogue and everything, so it is one of those that, in a way, it kind of reminds me a bit of the Maiden Lane series in the fact that, like, yes, each book, you can read it individually, but if you do read it in order, you're going to pull in other things that pull you into other stories that excite you about going forward. So it helped that I'd read book 1 in this series, as I said, but I do think I was missing some things because A, it's been a long time since I read book 1, and 2, I didn't read book 2, but now that I've read book 3, I do want to continue forward with them because the setup for like the next couple was really good, and I really fell back in love with all of these characters. Now, the story wasn't perfect. The third act conflict was a bit wonky for me, and again, there is some drama that comes up because of that man who assaulted Anne, and Cedric doesn't behave very well. And also, I did mention he is only temporarily blind, but it made sense because of how he went blind, and then you know, it's not even a full year that he suffers from this, which that is possible. That definitely happens, especially in a time when they didn't understand people's like eyes and brain injuries and things like that. So all of those things. But yeah, this has kidnapping, sexual assault, and violence in here. Also mention of sex trafficking. That's not something we like directly see, but it is referenced. And one of the villains in this, he is a sex trafficker. He's a human trafficking, and sex trafficking is involved in there. So now that I've said those words multiple times and put that on my video, let's keep going. I gave it 4 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. Now, the last historical romance I got through was the one that was kind of a bonus. I was supposed to read the Lorraine Heath, which I do want to read. I do, but there's no audiobook for Rogan, Texas, and I needed another audiobook. I needed another audiobook. That is what I was in the mood for. I was really working on some of my cross-stitching projects, which if you want to know my cross-stitching projects, I talk about them most in my Patreon vlogs, is where I post about those, because it's not really bookish, but anyway, so this last one I got to was Sweet Rogue of Mine by Shanna Gallen. And this was one that I got for free during the last Stuff Your Kindle Day. And the audio upgrade for it was only $2. So this was actually book 9 in a series. But when it was Stuff Your Kindle Day, so maybe one thing you don't know, if you go into it, particularly on your laptop, like if you go to the Stuff Your bookworm, whatever, romance bookworm, whatever site they tell you to go to, there are options for you to search by, obviously the subgenre romance, whether it has spice or whether it's a closed door. You can search for LGBTQ. You can search for disabilities as well. So because I knew the readathon was upcoming, I had looked up books that had disabilities in them. And this was one of them that came up for blindness as well. So I read actually quite a few this time, which was great. And so Sweet Rogue of Mine is about Prudence and Nash. And now Nash, he went blind from an accident. Now he is not 100% blind. He is blind in one eye and then partially can see in one eye, but he is struggling with PTSD horribly. He won't go anywhere without his pistol. He's shot at people multiple times. One of his friends has kind of become, someone that he was in the war with, has kind of come and stayed with him. He has a father who has been threatening to put him in an asylum. And of course that feels like he is the villain. It really feels like the father is the villain because he wants to do that and all these things. His home is in disarray, and the father is going to be sending a representative of his to check out the estate, to check out his son. And if he doesn't give that father a favorable opinion, he is going to have his son committed. Now, again, I won't explain the whole bag of tricks with that, but I will say this, just to ease your mind a bit, this father is not an evil man. Let me put that out there to start with. Things are very misunderstood with that, but the stakes of this in the beginning are this man may be going to an asylum, and his friends, at least, it's not supposed to be a long-term thing, but his friends all feel that if he goes there, he won't come out because it will deteriorate his mental state to have him treated that way. So he's this way. Now, this book begins with him in his garden trying to memorize the layout of everything. He's doing this on his own. I don't know how long he's been blind for in this one. I can't recall, but maybe a year or 2 or less than, I don't know, but not too long. Still has horrible PTSD at loud sounds. If there's any banging or hammering, as it were, he's right back in the war. Very strong PTSD with this one. And part of that means that's why his estate is falling apart. There's work that needs to be done. There's upgrades that need to happen, but he can't stand the hammering. It literally is driving him crazy. So at the beginning of this book, though, he's wandering through his gardens and he's gotten stuck actually in the mud, kind of. And our heroine, Prue, happens to come across him, and she is a new resident to, it's the vicarage or the wherever. Her parents are actually missionaries. She is staying with the local vicar because her parents aren't bringing her with on their next trip. She actually has a younger or older sister. One of her sister is blind, actually, which is very interesting. And anyway, she comes across the hero, doesn't know that he's blind, but she's talking to him. He's very grumpy with her. He chases her away. And then when she begins talking to some people in town, she learns that he was blind. Now, she didn't know that when she came across him. His back was to her. He's very grumpy with her. And she didn't fully realize what was going on. And so when she hears that he's blind and hears those things, she's like, oh my gosh. Well, of course he reacted this way. I embarrassed him. And she didn't know that. And so she goes back to visit him again to apologize. And this is very much a grumpy sunshine, right? She is just full of life. She may be a missionary's daughter. She does believe in God. She is a God-fearing woman, but she isn't quite as strict as her parents are. And she wants to be friends with everyone. And she is also a bit of an old maid at this point, or on the shelf, as it were. I think she's 28 or something. Like, she is getting up. Is she that old? Maybe she's only 23. Maybe she's only 23. I'm not sure. Either way, she is definitely not the youngest flower anymore. And there is a few shameful reasons why she is stuck in this small town with this guy. But anyway, she starts running amok in this small community, really. And she becomes friends with this man. And she continues to visit him and poke at him. And eventually she convinces him to let her teach him what is called night writing. I didn't fully read the exact details of this, but it isn't quite Braille yet, because that is actually done by, like, the man who created Braille that's his name, I believe. But there was this man who, or whoever, they created this type of, where you could still read and write with this, what's called night writing. And she'd actually learned it because she learned it so she could write to her sister. And so she convinces him to let her learn that. And she also convinces him to let, like, upgrades start happening to the estate. And she will actually spend time with him when the hammering is happening, like, so that he is able to work on that. So a lot of this book is about her, you know, it's not like she's completely fixing him of PTSD, but helping him come up with ways of coping with it, helping him get back into good health by making sure he's eating, by making sure he, you know, still gets fresh air, and help him with that. And yeah, it's beautiful. It was beautiful. And this woman, she's almost too much. But I love people like that. I really do. I love reading stories about women who are too much for people, because I've been told I'm too much. So it's always good to read that. So I gave this one 4 stars as well. This one had forced proximity. It was grumpy sunshine. It was class difference and slow burn. And yes, we had a blind hero who also has PTSD. There was also a attempted sexual assault that happens in here at one point. Okay. Moving right along here, there was Salvation by Noelle Adams. This was another book that I needed to read for my job. And this one is one of her older books. This is kind of borders on a dark romance. It's definitely emotional because it begins with a heroine who is kidnapped because her father is a very wealthy businessman, and she's kidnapped by these cartel members. And she's put in this small room. She's being held for ransom. And there is also an undercover FBI. Is he FBI? I don't even know if he's FBI, but he's an undercover detective who had actually infiltrated this gang. And he's been caught. And so he's being held captive until the boss gets there to basically execute him for what he's done. They were going to torture him for information about what he's shared with them and kill her. And so he's in the room that she gets put in. And so this is Gideon and this is Diana. And all of this captivity stuff happens, though, in about one chapter. Like, that is the setup of our story, is that she is raped by the people there. Gideon is there when it happens. They get rescued, but it's too late. She's already been raped. And then Gideon wants to keep checking in on her. And again, very early on, so this is a big trigger warning, she completely, like, loses it. Understandable. And she has a unaliving attempt. And Gideon really wants to be her friend and, like, be there for her. But in the beginning, that's so hard because seeing him just reminds her of, like, what happened and everything. But eventually they become friends, and then the salvation part of this is that he's falling in love with her, and she doesn't think she'll ever be able to let a man touch her after what happened, and so she's falling for him too, but she feels that she'll never be able to offer him what a real relationship would have. So this has a very simple concept, as a lot of Noelle Adams books do. It is like sexual intimacy after trauma, but it also is a very beautiful slow burn between these two. So I enjoyed this a lot. As I will always say, I'm no longer rating books by Noelle Adams or Claire Kemp because it's my job. I'm not going to tell you a rating. I'll just say read this if you are okay with those themes I mentioned. But also recall that this isn't a dark romance, okay? There's nothing dark between the relationship between Diana and Gideon. And all of the traumatic elements that happen very quickly. In fact, you could skip chapter 1 if you don't want to read what happens, though there's nothing in over detail or anything. The men take her to a different room and she says like, and then it happened. Like, she doesn't drag you through those things. But if you don't want to read that, you could skip the first chapter and still read it. But this has kidnapping, self-harm, suicidal ideations, and an attempt, as well as time in a, mental health facility for that. So it's heavy, but it doesn't dwell on anything too long. So yeah, I didn't even know she had this book. Like, that's what I'm loving so far. I've already read, I got to read ahead a book I'm very excited about, which by the way will be out by next Friday, Saturday, I think it's out. February 1st, Devotion comes out. But I've already read books in her backlist that I never would have picked up before. So this is going to be a really fun year. I'm excited about it. Okay, next up was The Apple Tree. And I have a mini rant about this one. And this was a new release. And this is book 2 in the Sunday Morning series. So this one is about Sarah's next youngest sister, so the middle sister. This is about Eve. Yes, of course, so Eve and the apple. She likes to make lots of things with apples. And there is a new neighbor whose name is Kyle, and he has a young son. He is also now a math teacher and a football coach in this small town. Eve, this is the summer after she graduated high school. And it appears to me, like, I don't know this for sure, there's still going to be a book about the youngest sister. It appears that each of these is taking place the summer the girl turns 18. So these are new adult romances, like they truly are. This is a 10-year age gap. So Kyle's 28, she's 18. And first I'll tell you the things that I loved about this book, okay? This was one of those like forbidden age gaps that was just very charming. It has that feel that I miss from new adult that I read way back, right? It may be forbidden, but it doesn't feel taboo. It doesn't feel dirty to me. It is truly like these two who have this bigger age gap, they find a lot in common. She feels very much like a rebel. She's very like sarcastic and quippy. It gets her in trouble with her parents. She does sneak out and drink a little bit, and she has fooled around with boys before. But she also feels that she can't be too rebellious because Sarah has kind of used up all of the rebel in the family things, which is very kind of ironic in a way because Sarah was always so good. Like, Sarah literally did everything that was expected of her until the senior year after high school, which is when she got with, her ex-boyfriend's older brother, right? She ran away now to Nashville, and it like broke her parents. Like, it really did. It embarrassed them. It hurt them. She does have good parents. They just are very strict, very religious. He's the pastor in the town. But again, I want to reiterate, it's not like he's the evil villain. He doesn't punish her with horrible things. Like, she gets grounded when she disobeys, and she is supposed to be a good example. Like, that's a lot of pressure, but it's the truth. Okay. Again, I've shared this. I have one of my best friends was a PK, a pastor's kid, and that is how it was. Like, it just was. But Eve's struggling with her things. So because they're next door neighbors, she ends up becoming kind of not full on a nanny, but kind of for like, she ends up watching the little boy because he does start school. I think he's kindergarten or first grade. And so she's like watching him like after school until Kyle gets home from football practice some days. And they just immediately, there's an attraction. And Kyle is like, man, nothing can happen with this. Because another thing too is that her dad is best friends with his older brother. So it's like, it's his older brother's best friend, and that's his daughter too. So there's even another complication for it. But he just is also like, he's a teacher in town. He might not be her teacher, but literally he's like her sister's teacher, and lots of people are watching him because he's cute. Like, he's very attractive. So there's just a lot of reasons why this wouldn't be good, in this small town. So anyway, but I loved their like flirting and the slow burn to them, and Kyle being like, this is gonna be so bad for me. And his reasonings of wanting to hold off, like, they're completely reasonable. And so when things do get more serious, he tells her, he's like, I would be risking a lot and you're really young. And she gets so mad when he says that to her, but he's like, I'm a parent. He's like, I feel this, I feel what we have, and it is special, it is special, but I have to think about my son first. And you are 18. You haven't done anything yet. What if you still want to do those things, and I'm in love with you, my kid's in love with you, and then you want to leave? And this isn't an impossible dream for him, because the reason he has a kid is that his college girlfriend, they ended up getting together, having this baby, and then she abandoned him and his son. So he's not wrong to be worried that a young woman would not be ready to be a parent so soon. So all of those things are true. They're true. Now, what was really tough about this one, and I'm going to tell you first, because there was no trigger warnings listed for this one, right? Ugh, I so don't want to go into this rant, you guys. I do not want to do this rant again. But the trigger warnings for this book are alcoholism, self-harm because of that, and a suicide attempt through an overdose, okay? And there's no warning about those. And I just can't help but think that it's because that's a big plot point. It is. The accidental overdose is a big one. But before even that, like, there's discussion of it. There's discussion of not Eve so much thinking about suicide, but there's someone else. I won't say who that is, but there's someone else who has spoken about wanting to end their life if certain things didn't go their way, type of thing. And there's no warnings for this at all. And Julianne doesn't really put warnings for anything, I'm realizing, because there's nothing. And I was very shocked by it, and it's supposed to shock you, right? This is the thing I always struggle with as someone who doesn't mind shocking content. Of course I don't. But I don't think there is any excuse in this day and age to not share those type of trigger warnings, especially when your genre is new adult contemporary. Like, it might say angsty or emotional new adult contemporary, but there's no sign that there's going to be a trigger warning like that, where a heroine takes too many pills, drinks a half a bottle of alcohol, and tries to kill herself because she's afraid of a mess that she's made. There's also an accidental hurt to a child. It's definitely an accident, but it's caused by our heroine being drunk when it happens. Not car, like, anyway, I don't want to explain the exact situation. She wasn't driving with him or any of that, but like, it's bad. And, there's no warning for any of these. And again, not a single fucking reviewer had said a thing about it, okay? And I'm so tired of that. And again, I'm not just blaming this on Julianne, because it isn't just her who's done this. But I do find it a bit frustrating that Julianne's been writing books for ages, okay? She has. I've been reading her for ages. And how could no one who read her book have pointed this out? And I'm even a bit like annoyed, because I got this arc from Valentine PR, and they're always very good about telling me what trigger warnings are in a book, right? Like, if you've ever done this, if you filled out to ask for an arc from Valentine PR, they have a little box that will like say, are you okay with the trigger warnings? And they usually list what they are. This one didn't have anything, which leads me to believe that they weren't told what they were, right? Because when they get it, their people don't have to read every single book they're asking, right? It leads me to believe that they weren't told that they needed to tell people, are you okay with these, right? Because every other time, like, they will say, are you okay with these? Because I'm sure they've had people like me who are told about the trigger warnings, but then freak out about them, whatever, right? I was not told about these. And again, I don't struggle with thoughts of self-harm or whatever, but the way that it happened in this one, it's not okay. Like, it's the same way I feel about, like when I read the one by Sawyer Bennett that irritated me so much, when I read The Icebreaker by Kat Mazira and Elise Farber. On the plus side, like, I reached out to them and they fixed that. Like they did. They were like, I didn't think about it. I'm sorry. And I'm like, hey, that's all right. I think you should have known that, but also you fixed it. Great. Now, I didn't write a note to Julianne because I don't have the energy to, and I'm tired of having to look like the woman shaking her finger. I'm even going on this rant because the point is that when I review books, the thing that I will do is I want you, my viewers, to know what they are. And if an author isn't going to prepare you for them, and I can't just say, hey, check the trigger warnings, the author has done it. You know, I'll say that a lot. Like there are quite a few of these that the authors list them, so I don't feel the need to do it because I'd be like, hey, the trigger warnings are in the book. You look at them, right? But in cases where they don't warn you about any of them, like I take it upon myself to do that because I want you to know. You don't have to listen. You don't want to have to hear, but like I want you to know. Okay, so I want to move on because I still have a lot of great books to talk about and really I got to move this along. But I am so sick of this and I'm really not going to like be merciful about it anymore, especially with an author who like, this isn't your debut book. This isn't your first rodeo. And I think it's kind of bullshit that you wouldn't warn people about this because it was extremely traumatic. Again, it's supposed to be angsty. It's supposed to hurt, right? But you can still have flagged people a little bit about something like this because it was very traumatic and it made me want to throw the book, right? Which again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Books can make you want to feel that, but self-harm in that way is very painful to read about when you aren't warned about it. Even if you're someone who like, this isn't going to spiral me. I know specifically of viewers of you who've told me that stuff does bother you. And even if one of you in my 23,000 viewers, it would hurt you, like, why can't you just put the warning? Why can't you do like, you know, sorry, this is the next book we're talking about. But like, but Rebecca Yarros in her traditionally published book, it says right here, like she even finds a cheeky way to say it. Like, just know you're going to see these things in there. Like it's said in the beginning of the audiobook. It was announced in the audiobook in case you only listen. Why is this not done by everyone, right? Especially when trad pub authors used to not give a shit if it was in there or not, right? Why is that happening? So we're moving on. I still gave this one 4 stars because again, my rant about that didn't completely take away from this book. I'm just over it. And I'm going to start docking stars when I review books if there's no chance for me to know, right? Because especially if I'm checking a box for the ARC that it says you're okay with these trigger warnings. If I've said yes, but then you didn't list that thing, then I am allowed to include that in my review because I didn't sign away my, to talk about that, right? So anyway, okay. I gave it 4 stars. It was a 2 on the spice scale, and trigger warnings were self-harm, suicidal ideation / suicide attempts, and there was accidental harm to a child. So those are the trigger warnings, and they were not listed anywhere. Okay, here we go. Onyx Storm. All right, non-spoilery thoughts first, but if you don't want it at all, now's the time to run. Okay, I'll put this up behind me. And I'll put up a spoiler tag when I'm gonna talk about a few spoilers, but I'm not gonna go into the whole thing yet. It's only been out for 4 days, and I know some people will be tempted, like me, to want to know things, and I just think it's more fun not to know. But here's my overall thoughts, and when I say some spoilers, I will put up the spoiler tag. When I take the book back down, you'll know I moved on. You can just skip to that part, okay? I'll give you a second. Okay, so non-spoilery thoughts. I had a great time, all right? I enjoyed myself so much reading this book. As with the previous 2, I grabbed this on audio the moment that it was available. I started listening in the morning, and this one did take me two sittings, which I know is fun. It did take me 2 sittings because I just needed to pause and like digest everything. I had some other projects to do, and then the next day I had to film in the morning on Wednesday morning and get that up, and then I finished it on Wednesday like evening, right? And I had a wonderful time with it, just like with the previous two. As I've said when I read these, I'm not really looking to pick it apart. Are there holes? I'm sure. Are there things that get annoying because they're repetitive? Sure. Is it a little bit like obnoxious how much she thinks about how good his ass looks in his flying leathers? Sure. But I adore these books, okay? I did give Fourth Wing a 6 stars when I had first read that book. And I've only read them each one time. Okay, I've only read them one time. I didn't do a reread. I just dive in and I trust the story to remind me of what I need to be reminded about. And guess what? I was able to pay attention pretty good, right? And I just had a great time. So I don't have like any nitpicks to say, because when I'm reading this, I'm not looking for them. Like, I'm really not. I have a couple things that I'll share, but they're not really so much about the story or how I felt about that. They're about something else, which I'll tell you. But I just like, I love how she tells a story. I love listening to them. I think Rebecca Soler does an amazing job. I love the battle scenes, like how intense they get and how like my heart starts beating so fast. I love the magic. I love the dragons. I loved, in this one, it's a bit of like a road trip type thing because we're looking for the 7th kind of dragon. And so we're going on these like road trip and we're meeting all these different places. And like, I love that stuff. Okay. So yeah, the tiny nitpicks I still have are the fact that like, why can't we have more POVs, Rebecca Yarros? Oh, I mean, those of you who listen to the audio particularly, you'll know that like it says, each time it says narrated by Rebecca Soler with Teddy Hamilton. This particularly also had 2 other narrators. I won't spoil who those ones are or whatever, but those other 3 narrators were all at the end of the book. Okay. This was 99% Violet, and then in the final battle at the end of this, we get some multiple POVs. That's all that I'll say. I won't say who or what or where, when, what's happening. And I want more POV now, okay? Now, it made sense to me, if, you know, in books 1 and 2, why we didn't get full access to Xaden's brain, okay? I know why. But by this time, why can't I have it? Why can't I have Xaden's POV? Why aren't we splitting more between them and filling in this world more, right? Like, we're 3 books in. Why can't I have more of it? Okay. And I think there are some times where it would have been great to have. I want to spend time with Xaden and Sigale and be in their heads and see what they think of everything going on. Okay. And I'm getting a bit annoyed with it, okay? Like, if I could really do it, I would be like, okay, Violet's getting a bit boring to me right now. Like, why can't I know what is going on? And it's just, each time I've hoped we would get more, and each time we're just getting those, like, single chapters, and I'm just tired of it. So that's kind of my whine, but, like, it's her story. She can do what she wants. Let's see, what else? I think that their relationship drama was much more tamped down in this one. We don't really have X drama in this. We do still have Xaden trying to pull away because he's dangerous. This time around, like, he does kind of have a reason for that. And it wasn't quite the same as, like, it's not Violet being pissed at him the whole time and punishing him for that, which I know bugged a lot of people in the last book. Like, it bugs me more upon reflection than it, again, when I'm reading through these the first time, I'm not hearing anyone else's opinion. Nobody is pointing out all those things to me. I'm just reading them and having fun. I felt that way with Iron Flame. Then lots of people have pointed stuff out, and now I can't unknow that. But it doesn't take away from the fact that, like, I don't know. I understood why Violet was annoyed. Yes, it got annoying that she wouldn't, like, move on from some of it, because it's like there was lots of people's lives on the line, Violet, so just stop, get over it. But in this one, she's not doing that. He's pulling away from her he's scared he's gonna turn all the way and hurt her. And so he has a reason for doing that, but she's not, like, punishing him for any of it. She's just trying to help him, trying to find a cure, and also find this 7th kind. And that's really what's going on. So there is this road trip, like I said, they go on. There's some information she receives about these different places that they can search for the 7th kind. And so we go on this trek. And then, of course, there's also a big battle at the ending where there is some crazy reveals and, of course, a good old Cliffy at the end to drag us along. Now, what I will say is this, before I say a couple spoilers, because, again, I'm not going to go into too much. I'm mostly going to say some of my favorite things about it. But I was half right about what I thought the end would be. So what I thought would happen is like there's this prediction that gets made by one of the baddies to Violet. And I did think that that was going to happen by the end. So I thought that was going to happen. And I also thought, no, I think that was it. I think that was the big thing I thought was going to happen. And that didn't happen at the end of this, which is good, because I was like, please don't let that be the thing that I think it's going to be. Don't let it be that. So she did surprise me. And I did also kind of appreciate the very Sarah J. Maas Cliffy to this one. And if, if you've read Mist and Fury, you'll know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I had a great time. Yep, we're going to have to wait a whole more long time for it, but it wasn't to me quite the same kind of cliffhanger as like the last two. Like, yes, like what the fuck happened, but also it can't happen for that long, right? And we'll talk about that in the spoiler parts now. So anyway, overview, I gave this 5 stars. I still think because with this series, I'm going more off of reading experience than with like, do I think it holds up to being the best story ever? No. I still stick with Fourth Wing being my favorite reading experience and the best. I do think I like this one more than Iron Flame, so I would go Fourth Wing, Onyx Storm, Iron Flame. But again, I'm not the hater of Iron Flame that everybody else is. All right? I like it. So, a few spoiler points. So by this, like, I'm just going to tell you my favorite parts of this so that if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you are someone who's being a little bit cheeky and is listening to this, you will maybe be now looking for these parts, but it's not going to completely spoil things for you, okay? So some things that I really liked, okay? I loved the discovery of the other types of who Andarna is. I thought they were a bunch of pious prigs, though. I'm very intrigued to see what it means when Andarna showed up again at the end. What I will say is that I thought that the time that she was gone was too short. Like, I didn't like that Andarna had to go and that she left them. And of course I knew she'd be coming back, but the fact that like she didn't go until what, we were at like 80% into the book by the time we were coming back, I thought that would be a return of her in like another book. I thought we wouldn't see her for the rest of this one. But the fact that she was back, it hadn't been very long. So what could she have truly learned? Like what truly like happened? I don't know. Like I don't understand why she was back so quick. And we, of course, don't get to know. Like, she's back in time to, like, help save us from that bad lady. But I just don't understand why she was back so soon. Like, I'm glad she's back. But for how painful her leaving was, and then to have her come back so soon, like, what will she know what was even worth it, right? I'm sure, like, I know we'll find out, but I don't know. I don't know what that was. The shocking death that happened on the one aisle with basically like the tarot cards of gifts that they were pulling out, like that was devastating. That hurt so badly. Hated it. The reveal of where Xaden's mom was, holy shit, that was wild. I thought that scene though, battling out with Xaden's mom's new husband that Violet does, was fantastic. In my opinion, one of Violet's best moments in the book, when she is literally showing that guy up with her like knowledge, using her scribe knowledge, as well as using her team to help her and literally like force that guy to tell them what they need. Straight up, I thought that was one of the badass moments because she got to really do something for Xaden in that way, like kind of, you know, like to be able to use her skills in the way that she has them to do that. The reveal of like what her father did, which we don't fully know the ramifications of, but crazy. The reveal that the powers of these different, I'm not great with the terms, if it's the sages only who have the powers or if there's other things, that they have the signets that are like the same as the riders, because it's like the balance of power, that if the side of good has it, then the side of dark has to have it, or maybe even not good, but like the side of life has it, then the side of death has it too. And the fact that Violet's mom, there is someone who has the signet, the power of her mom, and it's on the bad side, and we now have no one to fill that vacuum on the good side, because Violet's power could never have touched that. Just crazy. Like, wow, that blew my mind and is terrifying. Really like that. What else? Because I don't want to talk on this forever, but which I haven't shared with you. I am going to be on a live show in February with some of my friends to discuss this book. So I will definitely talk about spoilers there and everything. I'm really looking forward to that. But Honest Fiction is going to host me for that one, so that'll be good. But let's see, what other moments did I really like? I'm trying to think here. Yeah, I think those were some of the big ones. Yeah, we'll go with that. I'm sure there are more, but those were some of the ones I enjoyed the most. If you've read it, please don't spoil anything straight up in my comments. Okay, don't do that. Don't be an asshole that way. If you want to talk about it, we can, but make sure you like say spoilers and then do like star, and leave your comment down below so that when you send your comment, it's hidden. All right. Please don't just spoil things in the comments. I will delete your comment and not even interact with you. Okay, because this is too new out. Okay, it's too new out. I want my comments to be a safe place for people. So we can definitely talk about it, but just put spoiler and then really hit enter quite a few times. And then you can leave it down below so that I can open it to see it, but you're not spoiling anyone. Okay, so we'll take this down and we'll move on because I still have 3 books to talk about. Anyway, I gave it 5 stars and she has all of her trigger warnings listed, so that's great. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. We do some fun kinky stuff, although this isn't, Rebecca Yarros is not the mother of smut dragons like the New York Post or whoever reviewed it is trying to say. I'll talk about that in my next tea time video. You guys really liked my tea video from the other day. I'll do another one of those and we'll talk about some of the stuff that happened with Onyx Storm in it, okay? But whatever. Okay, moving on. We still have a few other new releases to get through. There was The Moon and His Tides by Gianna Darling. This is the first book in the, what is it called? The Impossible trilogy. This is Sebastian Lombardi's story. So this is Giselle. It's not Giselle. It's Cosima's twin. Yeah, Cosima's twin. And this one starts when he's 18 and he's actually a chauffeur for a car company in London, and he becomes this driver for a temporary driver to start with for Savannah Meyers, who she is 34 years old. She is the wife to Adam Meyers, who's 28 years old. So she's an older woman there. And he is a very famous actor. And Sebastian wants to be an actor. He's currently acting in like a small like play or whatever. And he and Savannah become very attracted to each other just in him driving her around. And they have a really hot, where he doesn't touch her, but like she gets off to him commanding her like in the car, and she tells her husband about him. And so Adam Meyers ends up showing up at one of Sebastian's performances and invites him basically to have an affair with him and his wife, because Adam is actually bisexual. Sebastian has never been attracted to a man, but all of a sudden he's having his bi awakening for this very sexy actor and his wife, and he actually gets invited to be their full-time driver and be their live-in boy toy. And that is how their romance starts. Not going to go into any more details about this one, but the things I will warn you about is, if you've read any other of the books in the Lombardi world, right? If you have read the Antiheroes Duet, which is Elena's, if you've read the Enslaved Duet, which is Cosima's, and if you've read, which is now called the Giselle trilogy, which they're being renamed. The first one will be The Frenchman. Those are getting new titles. You will have seen him at different ages. And in fact, when we see him in, I I think the anti-hero duet, he is actually in a time where he's away from these two. So this happened when he was 18, and there is going to be some time where he's separated from them. I won't tell you what happened or how that happened, but he's had this amazing experience with them. We have some fun kinky stuff. We have some emotional stuff, building their relationship. But we know from those other books that there's a time where he's away from them and he's really pining after these two. So just be prepared that this is a trilogy and there's going to be some angsty stuff happening here. But I did enjoy myself, and I would also consider this one an erotic romance. And it has an age gap because he's 18 and they're 28 and 34. There is menage happening. There is sword crossing that happens because it's a bi-awakening. And then, yeah, there is some sexy stuff in here. There's some anal, of course. There's some toys, some praise and degradation happening as well. So, very sexy. All right, then there was another new release with a new to me author. This was Between Smoke and Shadow by Bree Wilde. This is a debut author who asked me to read her an arc of this book, and I do think there's a lot of potential for this author, but I don't quite have a ton of time to go into this one. Yeah, I don't. And I ended up giving this a 3.5 star, and it is a 2 on the spice scale. And this is a fantasy. Like, there is magic. The royals in this world have magic, but it's also like dystopian. And the royals are basically stealing magic out of the common people, because even people who can't use magic, their life force is magic. And so there's a lot of public executions for very small infractions that they do. And then the royals are stealing the magic out of their people that they've enslaved and then are just killing at their will. And our heroine, very early on, her father gets killed for a very silly thing. And so all of the debt that he has, because they're indentured servants, they're not slaves, but they are, all of his debt gets passed on to his only living relative, which is our heroine. And so basically she's going to be enslaved until she's like 100 or whatever. Like, it's horrible. Then we skip ahead a few years, and she is actually a part of an underground resistance, and she's gotten a job as a servant to one of the princesses in the palace. And that is how she meets up. So Ruin is our heroine, and our hero's name is Herrick, and he's a prince, and he does not like the way the royals treat everyone or how things is going, but he's a crown prince, and he has to play a very dangerous game. And when he starts to interact with her, because she is first his sister's handmaiden and these different things, and he starts to fall for her. So yeah, very intriguing story. The magic I couldn't even get into right now, but the things that weren't super believable to me were how few interactions they had, and for how dangerous the situation is that they're in, that they just so easily like fall in love. Like, I'm like, how did they have time to do that? I didn't quite believe it. So just want to put that out there. There's a bit of a weakness there to me in how that works. But there were a lot of intriguing things about it too. There is a HEA by the end of this one, so I'm also confused by how we're just okay now. Like, did we really defeat the evil and we're just all right? Like, the world is still super fucked up, and it doesn't appear, like, I have no idea where it's going next. Like, is there going to be more of this couple? Are we going to do more with like other characters we met? I don't know. So there were things I liked and a lot of things that were confusing, and so I'm giving this one 3.5 stars. And definitely some trigger warnings here for this one for slavery, and then like violence and attempted sexual assault. Now, the last book that I finished was an ALC, though this one is available now, and it is High Sticking the Heart by Marie M. This is also a debut author. This is a BIPOC author as well. She's a Latina author, and this is great. She wrote this story that it's an interracial romance between a Latina woman who is an athletic trainer, and she has, you know, lots of cultural strains in her life where her family likes to be very possessive. They don't like that she has a job in a town all on her own. They're constantly checking in on her. So she actually, in the beginning, is sharing a place with her cousin, who her cousin's actually kind of been disowned by their family, though like her, like the heroine's brother, which is the cousin, like he still talks to her and loves her and everything. But because she moved out on her own, like they're very like angry with her with that. So there's a lot of that, though her family is very loving. They're also kind of controlling in that aspect. But she gets a job as an athletic trainer for this Dallas hockey team. And the owner's son and captain of the team, his name is Dalton. Our heroine's name is Ariella. and they actually meet each other at a bar, of course, before her job has started, and she is his fake date when his ex-girlfriend shows up and is giving him trouble. He is the sweetest man, okay? Very like, he's got a Texas drawl. He doesn't drive a pickup or wear a cowboy hat, but he's got the vibe, okay? Like, he's got the vibe. And Ariella is very attracted to him, but after the fake date part of it, they actually continue like talking for the night, but she doesn't ask for his last name and doesn't ask for his phone number. And so they have this crazy connection. He actually like, they split the cost of the ride where they went. They took a ride share, and he uses the ride app to text her by like sending her $1 and being able to send a message or whatever, because he didn't get her phone number. And he's basically kind of like knows how bad she'll feel if he keeps sending her money. So he tries to use sending her money to get her to give him his phone number so that he'll stop sending her money. But anyway, so then when she goes into her first day of work, of course, she discovers that he's on the team. And there's actually a paparazzi photo of the two of them being seen out together the night that they met each other. And so she almost gets fired the day that she starts. But she ends up telling the person that she's already dating Dalton. Actually, they're dating each other. And there's no policy against dating another staff member, but there's a policy of working with an ex-staff member. That policy doesn't make sense. But anyway, Dalton totally jumps on this because he really wanted to see her again, and now they have a reason to fake date. So he's like, yes, I'm your fake boyfriend. So then we proceed to have we have a black cat, golden retriever hero. He is so lovable. I honestly was telling Crystal about this book, and he really reminds me of Reese from Unsteady. Okay, I'm not saying they're exactly the same, and it is funny that he's also a hockey player, but if you've read Unsteady and you read this, you'll know what I'm saying, okay? He is so caring and loving to her, and it's very difficult for her to accept because he very much wants to take care of her, and for her, she's so sick of men like telling her what to do and ordering her around. And he doesn't want to do any of those things, but he also just wants to like smother her with attention too. So it is kind of difficult for them to balance that. But this was a very slow burn, but the tension is so good. And the way that he thinks about her and like adores her, like I was cool with all of it. Like really, truly, I was cool with all of it. It was great. So yeah, this one, I listened to the audiobook. It was narrated by Christian Fox and Vanessa Vasquez. This is, as I said, a debut author. It's an author of color. And I believe their book was done through one of the grants that Lyrics audiobook does. I can't quite remember, but they actually do some grants to get audiobooks made for audio in color. And that was also how I read another one last year that did that too. And I'm so glad I did. I never, this was a brand new author. I wouldn't have read this. And this was adorable. Okay, this was adorable. It was so sweet. And I can't wait to read another one from this author. Like, this was a new to me author that I will be stalking her for more. So I gave it 5 stars. It was a like 2.5, 3 on the spice scale. There were trigger warnings for a gaslighting parent and a toxic parent. Not her parents, we'll just say that. So there we go. Let us get this wrapped up here. I have somewhere that I have to get to. But thank you guys so much for watching this. If you made it all the way through, give me some hearts down below. Again, if you want to talk about Onyx Storm, I definitely want to talk about it with you. Just make sure you do the spoiler warning for it so that people who haven't had a chance to read it, because remember, it's only been out for 5 days, that they don't get spoiled for anything, because we're not about doing that unwillingly here, right? Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye.